So, welcome back to the Mystery Marathon. This mystery isn't very hard to figure out
Because of the
because,
title of the
you
video.
know, but it was a mystery on what we were going to do next because we
Yes.
did the vampire one and we said we'd do werewolves next, which I guess wasn't much of a mystery, but it was more of the titles we picked as the mystery. Um, then we got the very sad, heartbreaking news that David Lynch had passed away pretty much right after we had finished our vampire video.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like a stop the presses. The werewolf movies are going to have to go on hold. I knew Kaylee was going to want to do a Lynchathon.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's important that Kaylee kind of lead this one a little more than I because she's the big Lynch fan. I myself am kind of all over the place with Lynch. It really depends on the film. It depends on when I watch them. It depends on a few different factors. I had seen mostly every one of these. My opinions have changed one way or the other. Now, having watched them all back to back, and my opinion on Lynch as a filmmaker, so I'm definitely interested and excited to get into all of that. Should be a pretty long video, as one would expect, since we did watch 9 films.
Yeah.
And we're here to talk about all of his films outside of Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, which I have seen, but because you kind of need to watch the first season of Twin Peaks before you then go into that. At least I feel like you should. We didn't, but we have seen it, so we can't talk it. Obviously, we're going to have to talk about Twin Peaks to some degree, which Kaylee will do most of, since that's her show, and I've only seen it once. So, yeah, how'd this news hit you?
Um, it was really hard. I haven't really ever heard of, somebody that I didn't know dying and having like such a visceral and immediate reaction to it. Um, I never met David Lynch. I very much regret that that's something that I can never do now. But it just I think, especially this is something that happens with maybe celebrities, but directors and writers and people like just great artists, you kind of feel like they're immortal, and it really does feel like they never will die. So, I hadn't really been closely following his health or anything. I know that he had gotten diagnosed with emphysema, but I just was expecting him to be around for longer,
Yeah,
really. He was 78, which is not young, and
this
is
was like
pretty old.
3 days before, or 2 days, 3 days before his birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, I think it was very shocking news, and it still makes me really sad when I think about it because it's just like there's such an emptiness now in the world. I feel like he had such a wonderful creative vision and was such a kind person, and I think that his films are so inspiring to me. Like I really resonate with like everything that we've watched, and yeah, it was very shocking, and it makes me want to cry thinking about it again. um so, and I know that he touched a lot of people too. So I saw a lot of love outpouring for him just online with people finding out, and I think that his legacy obviously will continue on, and we have a wonderful body of work that we can keep looking back on and rewatching and finding that inspiration from. So yeah, it was a really tough news to hear. But I'm very happy that we got to go through his filmography and watch everything. There were things that I hadn't seen. I do consider David Lynch to be like one of my favorite directors, but I hadn't seen all of his movies. So, and I haven't seen all of his short films at all. I think I've seen one. I mean, we watched a few actually just before filming, or yeah, before filming this, but yeah, so it was cool to like watch things of his that I hadn't seen before. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about everything. So,
Well, when it comes to Lynch, having made his first film in 1977, and just having died in 2025, you have almost 50 years
yeah.
of filmmaking, and he was making shorts even before that, all the way back to like 1967 or something. So even 10 years previous to that, it's almost 60 years of stuff. Um, I was pretty surprised at how little films he had put out
Mm,
in that time. When I think about filmmakers, but then with the kind of like auteurs of their time, I think that with these kinds of artists, they don't make film because it's a job. They don't make film. Some do. Some directors make just endless films, like
yeah.
Ridley Scott. He's still going strong, making
He's
one,
like
two films a year
the
sometimes.
Stephen King of
He's
directors.
ridiculous, man. I think he put out like Last Duel and House of Gucci in like the same
Yeah.
year, and he puts out like Gladiator 2, and he just never ever stops putting movies out. And he's like in his 80s, I think now. Same with Scorsese, puts out a movie like
Mm,
every couple years at least. So some of these directors, the big name directors, do put out an endless amount of them. But like if you look at like Kubrick or somebody,
yeah.
they don't have a lot of movies.
Hmm.
They maybe made 10 freaking films in their whole career, and Lynch made 10 like feature films in that near 50-year period of time, which is just so interesting. But it really is just like, it's only when the mood strikes.
Well, yeah, like the thing I think, especially with David Lynch, is that more than just being a director, he's just a creator.
I'll be right
I
back.
mean, we have cookies in the oven and we have to take them out before they burn. Um, but like he obviously is a painter. He started out as going to art school and painting, and he continued painting throughout his life. He's also a musician and has been making music. So I feel like with films it's just another sort of avenue for him to express himself and express ideas that come to him, versus like what you're saying where there's people who kind of like directing is all they do. You know, he
Yeah.
just is like a jack of all trades when it comes to creating stuff. So,
Yeah. I'm trying to get Kaylee her cookies.
oh no, I don't need to eat them
So
now. It's okay.
I know you wanted to eat them
It's
while we were
okay. I
doing
can I can
it.
wait.
Yeah, no, I agree. He obviously wasn't just making film, and most people don't. And having now watched a couple of his shorts from early in his career, before and during the making of
Hmm.
Eraserhead, you can see that he was an artist, right? Like a painter,
Yeah.
as well as a filmmaker. And then while watching these movies, you see that he sang in one of these, and I think in Mulholland Drive, or I'm sorry, Inland
Inland
Empire,
Empire, yeah.
he's singing in
But
one part,
he's
and he made music
collaborated
with some
Julie
other people
Cruz, and I
throughout.
think maybe others, but Julie Cruz is the main one, and of course Angelo Badalamenti. He's always working with him, but
And you can always tell that like he has such a reverence for music in general, because
yes,
I don't think there's a single thing we watched, save for maybe Eraserhead, where there isn't like some nightclub
and
singer kind of scene.
well, save for three of his movies, I'd say
Yeah,
there's a
Straight
race
Story,
and
definitely.
Elephant Man.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, he so okay, well, one of the things I guess we can talk about before we even go into the movies is that there are like David Lynch isms. Like there are very clearly tropes that appear over and over in the majority of his films.
yeah,
Nightclubs or like a night stage performance happens in a lot of them.
yeah.
We see red curtains
Red
all the
curtains,
time. He has this
always.
obsession with 50s Americana, and
Yes.
a lot of his protagonists are blondes. He really likes to cast and focus on blonde characters, which kind of ties into the 50s Americana, I
Very
feel.
Hitchcock of him.
Yeah. um There is a obviously also dreams is
Oh
also
yeah,
something that just kind of resurfaces because his movies are very much dreams just come to life. uh
most of them.
and when we were watching this like the shorts with some interviews from him, he says in the very beginning that he like wanted to make paintings come to life, is
Yeah.
that's what got him interested in making movies. And I think that's like a perfect little description of what a Lynch film really is. It's like a painting, um and very dreamlike. There's a lot of others. The color blue comes up a lot. Highways, a lot of his movies kind of have some highway scene, or like on the road, so that's pretty interesting. um and then other things like some of the themes of like infidelity and
Mm-hmm.
crime and just this drug use and everything. But diners too. I know we
Oh
said
yeah,
nightclubs with diners for sure.
yeah.
So yeah, there's those kind of, you watch the movies and you see he very so some directors, I guess this just depends on your preference, but some directors, they can make like wildly different movies where you would never know that they were directed by the same person. And then other directors have this flavor to them where you just instantly know, like, I'm watching a Lynch movie, I'm watching a whatever film.
Wes Anderson,
Yeah.
Tim Burton.
And
Yeah,
I really like that, honestly. I like seeing the personality of the director come through the film.
sure.
I think that's cool. So,
Yeah, I mean that's what gives them their style,
mhm.
right? And that's what makes them identifiable.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
somebody who doesn't have a unique vision or style to them. But I don't know. I also like directors who can make so many different
Yeah.
things, right?
Chameleons, kind of.
Steven Spielberg,
Mm.
obviously, is a prime example of this, where he's made every kind of film.
I feel like Andrew
Um,
Jackson kind of is too,
you know,
in a
so
way. But yeah.
anyway, let's get
Yeah.
into the films.
Yeah.
So, starting with the 1977 directorial feature debut,
Good old
Eraserhead.
Eraserhead. Should
Um,
we read the like IMDb
oh,
synopsis
everybody
version?
here fucking knows
Well,
what these things are. You can read that one if you
it
want.
would just be kind of interesting because I think I haven't read the synopsis for all of them,
Let's
so I'm
hear
sort
it.
of curious, like what is
How
being.
they describe these
Yeah.
movies, yeah, how they
So,
promote these movies, because we had read during the uh, during the attempt of promoting Inland Empire
oh
that
yeah.
the marketing team that was handed this was like literally had no idea what to do with it. I feel their pain, and they just literally came up with a woman in trouble.
Yeah.
That was it. That's all
Yeah.
they could cover. They're like, I don't
It's,
fucking
I
even know what
mean,
to say about this
I
movie.
feel like that's accurate. So for Eraserhead, IMDb says Henry Spencer tries to survive his industrial environment, his angry girlfriend, and the unbearable screams of his newborn mutant child.
Yeah, we've read that
I think
already.
we did read that one. That one I think is pretty apt.
Yeah.
I love Eraserhead. Eraserhead I think is fantastic. It's sort of like the quintessential Lynch film, I think, in a lot of ways. I really love the black and white. I love the industrial landscape, as it says there. I think that's really cool. And obviously he was in Philadelphia, is like kind of where he started. And I think that environment plays its way into, a lot of his films and like the motifs of industrialism. Um, I love the Eraserhead baby. I love that. I just think it's such a weird and wonderful film. Like, it makes me feel like it has this anxiety that's there the whole time, and like a grittiness, but in a really nightmarish kind of way. And it's weird and wonderful. I love the radiator lady with her big cheeks,
Yeah.
the in heaven.
Everything is
It's
fine.
fine. I love all of it. And I guess also we should say, since we're starting this, I do not claim to have a full understanding of all of these movies. I think that they are very much, aside from two of them, open to interpretation. And that's one thing about Lynch that is also like quintessential, is that he is like notorious for when people ask him to explain his work, he doesn't. He's just like, there, I'm not going to tell you what the movie means. Like, you have to figure out what it means, you're on your own, like to yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. Not every filmmaker can do that successfully. We've watched plenty of movies where we don't get enough information and it's like a pointless watch because you just don't have any idea. But because of the imagery and like the vibe of Lynch films, I think that they really lend themselves to the viewer figuring stuff out on their own.
Yeah.
So,
I don't I don't think there is an answer, and I don't think that it is like, in order to appreciate like a true Lynch film, right? Because there are a couple films in here we'll talk about that don't really follow the typical structure of a Lynch film.
mm-hmm.
They're more just straightforward narratives that have very little Lynchian kind of vibes to them outside of, you know, maybe a scene here or there. One of them straight up just, you, I would never in a million years think it was a Lynch film at all for any reason. But then one of them has some surrealist stuff at the beginning, at the end. But you know, while you were talking about that, I wonder if one of the issues here, the reason you love him so much and the reason that I struggle with him at times, is because, you know, not only am I somebody who am like very obsessed with logic and reason, it's make it
mm.
make sense, you know, my famous saying when I get mad. But it's also like I have a hard time letting go of my control,
mm.
right? And I have a bit of a control freakness in me, um in a way. Like, I'm not a control freak with Kaylee or
Oh
anybody
no.
around me.
No, not
It's
at
with
all.
myself
Yeah.
and like my world around me,
Yeah.
like how I can control things. Why I don't like thinking about death. That's why I don't like any
Mm.
of those things, because like I have no control over
Mm-hmm.
those things. That's
Mm-hmm.
why I don't like flying. Like, I'm not up there in the cockpit. You don't want me in the cockpit. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm saying like I don't have any control and I don't like that.
Yeah.
And I wonder if like these are the kinds of movies where you just have to let go,
Yeah.
and you have to not, you don't have to want to worry about, does it all make sense? It has to just come, it has to appeal to you in a way where you just vibe with it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you just are there and you pick up the pieces that matter to you and you leave the rest.
Yeah.
Trying to connect all, like, if if a Lynch film was a puzzle, there, I don't think the puzzle pieces all connect into one big picture. I think there's
Mm.
always going to be puzzle pieces that are left out,
Mm.
and you're going to look at it and like, and you have a complete picture,
Yeah.
and then you have, you know, like if you put together a puzzle and it was complete, all the edges were boom, and you had all the thing, and you had like 15, 20 other pieces off of here, and you'd be like, what the fuck are these? And then
Yeah.
you took those pieces out and you like put those in different places, and it made it kind of a different picture. You'd be like, what is this puzzle? Right? And I think that's kind of like what it has to be with Lynch. It's like, I don't think all the pieces fit exactly. You kind of just have to take the pieces that work for you, and you come up with the story you want, and you just let all of the threads that you can't connect go.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that he has a vision. You know, aside from what we'll talk about when we get to Inland Empire, I don't think that he makes movies without like a plan, like a total. Okay, I should say he has a vision. That's what I said, right? He has a vision in mind. So
But I
it's
don't think he
but
even knows why he's
I do
putting
think, yeah,
certain things
at
in there,
times
because they're kind of like dreams.
it's
They're,
sort of, yeah, it's like from the collective unconscious. I think
yeah,
that he really does you know, or he really did tap into these symbols and just like imagery that really is from somewhere deep inside of us. And yes, you know, describing Lynch movies as a dream is truly, I think, the most accurate way to describe them. And,
yeah,
you know, for some people, they can really vibe with that. And for other people, they don't want it. They want
no.
a more structured narrative, you know, and that is totally fine. I don't think that Lynch is a filmmaker that's for everybody. Clearly, you know, there's obviously people who are diehards and who love him and everything. But it's maybe an acquired taste, or it takes a certain kind of person. And I know when we were watching this, like you enjoyed the films and there's things that you like about them and stuff, but you're not as into them as I am, for
No,
sure. And I think that's fine. I think that it's again, just it's movies don't have to be for everybody. So if you're somebody who's like, I've never liked Lynch and I can't like him, I don't think you should feel bad for that if you
no.
do. Obviously, I always encourage people to give, if they haven't watched it, if you're watching this and you've never seen a Lynch film, definitely try. I mean, you might as well, and see if you like it. But anyway, back to Eraserhead.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I would say on that matter, and I think this is very indicative of like our tastes and whatnot for Lynch, and makes perfect sense. Kaylee is obsessed with her dreams and like reads about dream stuff and journals all of her dreams, and I do not have any interest in my dreams. I think they're pure nonsense. I don't subscribe to any kind of thoughts towards them. Like when I wake up, she always wants to talk about her dreams. I don't at all. So
I
I think
mean,
that makes perfect sense that you are like you're very obsessive with the kind of what happens to our brain when we sleep, and these movies they are all like dream logic. It's like explaining a dream to someone and then
yeah,
that person being like, well, how does that make sense? Why were you on a train
right.
with your landlord
Yeah.
making,
Like,
train or making fucking
yeah.
whatever while your mom was in the corner
Yeah.
masturbating?
We
Be
we
like,
we make we make the
uh,
meaning, it kind of comes from us. And to quote Dune, dreams are messages from the deep.
sure.
But yeah, that's a good like indicator of our two personalities, or two like viewpoints when it comes to that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Um
So
but yeah, I mean, Eraserhead is very, very dreamlike. It is kind of nonsensical at times, and off-putting.
yeah, this is where we get the pairing of longtime collaborator
Mhm.
Jack Nance, who plays Henry Spencer,
Yeah.
uh, the Eraserhead. Um,
Eraserhead himself.
he, of course, makes an appearance in most of Lynch's films before his death, which I think happened right after Lost Highway. Like it happened like while they were filming or right after they had stopped
Mm,
filming. We had read some
it
wild
was
trivia
really
how he like
crazy.
got beat up in a donut shop parking lot
Yeah.
and died of his injuries like the next day because he didn't go to the hospital and just
Yeah.
went home and went to sleep and never woke up.
Went home and drank and went to
Yeah,
sleep.
he was a
Yeah.
big alcoholic, I guess, but
Yeah.
yeah, he got into a fight with some guys in a parking lot, some like teenagers or something, and no one ever found out who they were. Um,
Yeah.
but when I read that, I was just like, "What? You got beat up in a donut part? That's what? That's
Very,
crazy.
yeah.
Sounds like something from a Lynch film."
Yeah, it does kind of. Yeah, like a lot of directors, there are repeat actors and actresses that show up again and again in his films, and I quite like that because I think that they work well with him, and I like the look of them and all of that. And Jack Nance has got like just a very, I mean, he's always Eraserhead. I mean, yeah, he's just, that's Eraserhead. Like,
Well, one thing we had definitely noticed, throughout watching these is in this, he looks young,
yeah.
right? It's 77. And then the next time we see him, I didn't even realize that this was the same guy from like
Mm,
Twin Peaks and whatever because he aged so much.
yeah.
And it's like, when you find out, like Haley kept saying, she was like, drinking and smoking age you. And I'm like,
Yeah,
they really
they
aged him
do.
because
Yeah.
he looks incredibly older
Yeah.
just in a very short period of time the next time you see him. And I'm just like that. I never realized, I never connected the dots that who that was in his other films because he just looks so much older. He looks so much different to me. um as far as this movie goes, I had seen it once when I was going through my film phase where I should say like classic film phase where I was watching all of the films that everyone was expecting me to have watched because I was the film fanatic, and being a film fanatic, I grew up watching, 80s teen comedies and horror movies and, random shit, but I'd never really delved into the classics, the obvious titles, the Gone with the Winds, the Casablancas, the Citizen Kanes, and
Mm.
whatever. So I went through this period of time where I watched, oh God, for maybe a year or two, I just watched endless amounts of the classic films, the Godfathers and everything. And Lynch was a very revered director of the time. This would have been in early 2000s. So
Mm.
at that point, I don't even Mulholland Drive hadn't even been made yet. I think it was just gonna come out pretty soon. So I was just like, okay, I got to check this guy's stuff out. People had mentioned how different Eraserhead was. It was a masterpiece, and it was labeled as horror as well. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, obviously I've got to see this movie. And a 18-year-old me watching that was not a good combination. I thought it was the most pointless, drivel, fucking pretentious nonsense I'd ever watched. I was just like, what? Okay, this is that kind of movie. People are like, it's so smart. There's so much going on, and you just don't get it. Emperor's New Clothes kind of shit. And I hated it. And I was just like, this is so stupid. And then I labeled Lynch like that filmmaker in
Mm.
my head and was like, oh, it's weird for weird's sake. And he's, doing stupid shit just to say he's, artistic. And, I kind of labeled him that way for a long time. And while that opinion has changed for sure, and I definitely liked Eraserhead more this time around, just looking at the filmmaking and looking at some of the shots and
Mhm.
and just the overall atmosphere and
Mhm.
mood of the film, I think is the thing that I appreciate the most. And
Mhm.
you know, this one, much like other ones that we watched, this is one that I can absolutely give you. Maybe not every single little piece, but I feel like I can explain this one pretty simply
Yeah.
for myself. And I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
that's an important, distinction here. Is that with any of his films, you're always going to have to say this is my interpretation of it,
Yes.
and other
Yeah.
people will be like that's not even close, and it's like, well, that's your interpretation. But I
Yeah,
mean,
we had some good
yeah.
conversations throughout like all the films about like what does this mean? Like do you think it means this? And that's definitely the fun of watching Lynch, I think. It's interesting too because Eraserhead is his only film that has the horror genre label. I think is what we saw when we were looking on IMDb unless I'm missing something, but I think all the rest of them aside from a couple, are like thrillers, like
Mm-hmm.
psychological thrillers, which I think is really interesting. I don't think that those labels are wrong, but there is definitely some horror aspects to the other films for
Sure.
me. So, and even watching some of his early shorts, I think horror is like I don't know, maybe that's just a my take on it, but I feel like he's like got horror from the beginning as
Oh
like
yeah.
an avenue for expression. So yeah, I'm glad
Yeah.
that you
We watched the grandma,
we watched the
the grandma,
grandmother
their grandmother.
right before
That's
this,
a
which was
hundred
like a
percent
30
horror
minute,
without question.
and then the
The
alphabet
alphabet
was
is
very horror
horror. Yeah.
feeling. And even the very first one, which I forget, has like
I
a
don't know what it was called.
anyway, but I'm glad that you enjoyed, aspects of Eraserhead more on this watch because yeah, I think it's a really cool one. This was the first Lynch film I had ever seen too. So, and I didn't have that reaction though. I thought it was really cool and yeah, I like it. I think what's fun for me too about Lynch movies is that I think you can revisit them and get something new out of it every single time. That's actually the experience that I'm having with Twin Peaks, which is his, television series, obviously, that him and Mark Frost wrote and directed together, and various other directors, of course. I just feel like every time I watch it, I get kind of I have my general like flavor of Twin Peaks, but I feel like I get new things each time I watch,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's the same with his movies.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think Eraserhead is pretty obviously like his fears of fitting in and
Hmm.
doing what's expected and working in the tech, or the the industrial industry, um where they're poisoning our
Mm.
food and our water and the world around us and our babies. And you're gonna get stuck with the wife you don't even
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you're gonna have the kid who won't shut the fuck up and is just screaming and crying all night. And you have lust for the neighbor because she's exciting. And the parents are weird and fucking creepy. And as I said, like the food and all that stuff is poison. That
Mm.
those like those
The
little
little
like micro
chickens.
chickens that like have like black ooze coming out of them
And
and
the
they're moving
mom
around.
cuts
And
into it, and it like, or he cuts into it and starts like gushing out of it, and then she's like,
yeah, because I want to
that stuff is
say
great.
I want to say Henry Spencer's is kind of a stand-in for him. He puffs up his hair. Lynch loves to puff its
Yeah, yeah.
hair.
Lynch has had like the signature Lynch look forever. Like
Yeah,
I feel like his haircut never changes, which is so
ever.
funny.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Henry Spencer does is some embodiment of a part of Lynch. And yeah, I think anxiety and like a fear of parenthood and passing things on to your children, I think those are very I guess I'll say obvious
yeah,
themes, because they are. um and then there's also all the weird stuff, like the whole like Eraserhead part of things, right? Like all of that, which
yeah. You'll become like part of the whatever, because he gets his head taken and literally turned into the product from the factory that he's
mhm,
working at. Like you're just gonna become.
nothing,
Yeah,
because erasers also erase things,
right,
obviously. Like they don't create stuff.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. You're just erased in the end.
yeah, yeah. I think it's cool. I think it's a really cool, and I love the weirdness of it. I really do.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's
Oh, there's
150 videos
yes,
online
yeah. We're
explaining
not
every little
gonna
detail. We don't fucking
we
know.
don't we don't
I
know.
don't
I
know.
would love to watch those videos because I do like analysis videos, but we're not gonna be doing that, unfortunately.
I mean, yeah,
Maybe someday
if
we
we
could do
sat
it.
down and wrote out our thoughts and put it together a scripted video, and I'd love to see anybody try to do this style, unedited, one take, and do some analysis of a film that they just watched. You're not going to get much else out of them. These people who do those types of
Oh, they do
videos,
tons
the
of
video
research,
essays, yeah,
and
they
yeah,
do endless
yeah,
research. They write
yeah.
scripts. They recheck their information. Like if you want that kind of style, then there's 100 channels like that, thousands of channels like that. But that's not what we're doing here.
I also, though, while we're going through these films, like obviously we're telling you maybe some of our interpretations and like thoughts and feelings. Of course, we want to
Yeah,
hear what you
absolutely.
guys think, and what stands out to you in the films and all of that, because yeah, we want to hear about it. If you like them, if you don't like them, but you're not allowed to tell me if you don't like David Lynch, because this is a David Lynch video. Only David Lynch lovers are allowed. Haters, you got to get out. Just kidding. But not kidding.
Anything more on Eraserhead?
No, I think that's it for now. We have a bunch to go through, and
Yeah,
I know we're gonna
yeah.
talk about a lot, so we're gonna try
We
and
shouldn't spend more than like
yeah,
10 minutes on
we're
any
gonna try
film.
and go through them quicker. So yeah, the next one,
The Elephant Man.
yeah,
Um, this is a much more obviously like straightforward
very
movie.
straightforward.
And this one is a biopic, which
Yeah.
is super interesting. That he would do something. I think when you're early in your career and you're taking projects, you take what's given to you. Obviously, Eraserhead, like anybody's directorial debut out of film school. If you look like Christopher Nolan did Following, and Darren Aronofsky did Pi, and you know, you always have that like black and white, like
It's cool though. I like black and white
no, it's
film,
fine. I'm
but
just
yeah,
saying
yeah, it's more
that
like artsy and
you do what you want and to
yeah,
get noticed, and
yeah.
then your next film, you usually make the studio film where they give you some kind of like biopic or some kind of drama or something from there, and you make that as good as you can. And then the next one typically is like when they give you the bigger like blockbuster type of thing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
where Batman Begins, or in his case Dune. um and then from there, once you've kind of established yourself, you can then go back. Once you did the big movie and it hits enough, then you can have the cachet of being like, I'll do whatever I want now,
Yeah, yeah.
right? um So anyway, so with the Elephant Man, this is just such a fucking sad film
Oh my
because
gosh. Because it's
obviously the
real?
life of Joseph Merrick was tragic as fuck, and
Joseph Merrick or John Merrick?
his real name is
Oh.
Joseph Merrick, I
It's John
think,
Merrick in the film,
but they
right?
go and he was called John Merrick, but
Oh.
I think his name is like Joe. I think his real like full name is like
Mm.
is Joseph Merrick, but we'll just call him John Merrick. But yeah, it's just, I mean, fuck. The guy
It's
died at what, 27 or like
27 or
27, I
28, I
think.
think. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a phenomenal movie. Anthony Hopkins and
John
John
Hurt.
Hurt. Oh
Yeah.
my God. Like, phenomenal performances.
Yeah.
I had never seen this movie before, and it is so sad. It is so tragic. It is one of those movies that you are just like, I can't believe a human being went through something like this.
Yeah.
Um, you
Another
know,
movie in black and white.
yeah, also in black and white, and I think that's great. Very. This is such a, like we had kind of mentioned. There's a couple in the opening and
Yeah.
towards the end, a few slightly surrealist segments around his mom, John Merrick's mother, but otherwise it's a very very straight film. Like it's and I think that that's good because it is retelling somebody's life. This isn't like, if this had been a fictional person, like a fictional character, then I think there's probably more like leeway when it comes to doing like weird, surrealist stuff.
Yeah.
But it feels much more respectful that it's just kind of like, this is what happened, this is the story, you know.
I don't know his story well enough by any means to know how accurate
Oh yeah, I should
this
say I don't
is.
know that either. So.
But regardless, I mean, I can only imagine that in this time period in which the Elephant Man was dealing with this stuff, that people were horrible
Yeah.
to him, and just, this is that ultimate story of somebody being different and people being horrible to them and you wanting to protect them and you wanting them to just, be accepted for their differences, and you're like screaming at the screen like, leave them alone, and
Mhm.
you can't help but feel horrible for this person. I don't know how many movies like this have been made with this kind of deformity. And the only other thing I can think of course, is The Mask, the Rocky Dennis
Mm.
story with Cher and Eric Stoltz.
Mhm.
Um, I don't. Yeah, it's just, it's such a, God. This was a downer
Yeah, it
of a
really
movie. This
was.
really hit hard while we were watching this.
Yeah.
Just, you really, really feel awful throughout. But there's also, like, even though the film is super depressing, it's also kind of filled with a lot of hope.
Well,
Um,
John Merrick has so much hope and kindness in him after everything that he's gone through and how he's been treated. And he's this like bright,
yeah,
like wonderfully intelligent person,
emotionally, and yeah,
emotionally and otherwise. And Anthony Hopkins' character, the doctor that cares for him, has such compassion. And even all the other people in the hospital aside from that one night guard.
oh my god,
But the nurses, and it's such an interesting, like,
the nurses kind of
the
learn to
nurse.
care
Well,
for
yeah, that's
him.
what I was
Yeah.
gonna say, because they start off being like, he's weird and ugly, like, I don't like him. And then once they get to know him, coming to realize that he's a normal and good person. And
Yeah.
this is very much like this kind of thing where somehow we've come to like associate evil with ugliness,
Yeah.
is such a horrible concept, or evil with differentness.
Yeah.
Either way, it's so bad.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
yeah.
he would look like this in a horror movie too,
Well, right.
right?
Yeah. I
Where
mean,
he's the villain. This is like, Jason Voorhees or something.
sure,
Yeah.
tons of horror villains are ugly to signify,
Deformed.
and deformed to signify that they're evil.
Hills have
And
eyes.
that's definitely not great, and it's interesting to think about like why we as humans do that. So, but obviously this is not at all a horror movie. And it's sad to see his end, the way that he meets his end by just wanting to sleep like
Mm.
a regular person, and he dies in his sleep, and it's just like, oh
Yeah, the
my
weight of his
gosh.
own head
Oh,
crushes his airwaves, so he
yeah,
can't breathe and dies in his sleep. Horrible.
really horrible.
I don't know how much longer he would have lasted. Now in the movie, they say like, does she know he's dying? Which I don't know what that
Does
scene,
he know he's
or
dying?
does he
Yeah.
know he's dying? I thought
Yeah.
it was okay. I thought I didn't think it was John. I thought it was somebody else who was like.
Oh, maybe you're
I
right.
thought it was someone they were trying to
Oh
tell,
yeah, you
and
might
they
be right.
hadn't
It
been
might
telling. But I
be
was like,
John.
when I read about it, it just seemed like he was fine and he decided to sleep and it was accidental. So I don't know what he was dying from
Yeah, I don't
outside of
know.
his deformity. Might have been doing something that was killing
Yeah,
him.
I don't know anything about that condition long term
Oh, yeah, I
either.
can't
So
imagine he has a full life
yeah,
expectation. But I mean, this is the 1800s. People died much earlier than
yeah,
they
in their
do now.
30s, and yeah.
I don't know about the 30s, not then.
I mean,
By that
sometimes
point,
people did.
sometimes
um,
sometimes people die at 30s now.
that's true.
Um,
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah. Again, we don't know how accurate this is to the real life events, but as far as a film goes, I think it's a fantastic
we
film.
also get to see that he was a really phenomenal artist, even
Yeah,
though he only had one working arm, and he makes this
it's like a
model,
model of a church that he.
and he doesn't even have the full picture. He
Hmm.
can only see the top of it, and he creates the entire architecture of the rest of the building. And
Hmm.
we actually looked up the picture of his model that he really built himself, and it looks pretty accurate to the one in the film.
Yeah.
And pretty incredible, amazing stuff for a person who probably didn't have a proper education, probably wasn't taught how to do almost any of this stuff, only had one arm to do it, and his imagination,
Yeah.
better than I could fucking ever do. That's for damn
So
sure.
yeah, lots of talent, and yeah, that model is still has been preserved, and then we also found out that his skeleton has also been kept, which I definitely got a very bad feeling from initially, because I thought it was kept in
Like a museum
like a
for people to look
museum for
at
people to.
now.
And I guess it's private.
Yeah, it's not for public
I don't know if that's,
viewing.
I don't know what that means as far as private. Like I don't know if that's some
He's in a
private
it's in
or if
a
it's like a
it's in like
medical thing.
a medical
Yeah,
research,
which I
lab or whatever.
understand
So
because of
I think
his.
they're trying to figure it out,
Yeah,
what had happened to him,
but
so they can help
it's
others not have that problem. Which of course, I mean, nobody would want to live like this. As
yeah.
much as we try to accept these people, and we should, of course, right? Like nobody
You wouldn't
asked to be born
choose.
this
Yeah,
way. Nobody,
it's
but
painful.
nobody would
It's not.
want this,
No,
right? This
it's
is not
yeah,
something people would elect to have. So if you could prevent illnesses or deformities or whatever, pretty much every single person would elect, if they had the ability to do so, to be like, yeah, no, I'm good. I
I
don't want
mean,
that.
he even asked like, "Can you cure me?"
Of course.
Because that's,
I
he's
mean,
in pain.
yeah, it's
He's in
fucking
pain and he's
miserable.
sick, and yeah, it's
Well, he
not
has like
good.
chronic tuberculosis.
No, it's chronic bronchitis.
Bronchitis, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
chronic
Oh
tuberculosis
my
will just
god, yeah,
kill
that
you.
would kill you. Sorry, yeah,
It's okay.
bronchitis.
Yeah, it's yeah. So, but fantastic film. Really, really wonderful performances, and
Yeah, it doesn't feel anything like a Lynch film for me for the most part, but I can see the flavors in there of what he will do later, but
mm,
not a ton of it. It just doesn't seem like the kind of movie, but like the weird deformed character,
hmm,
I can see why he would gravitate towards that, because he himself feels like somebody who doesn't fit into society, because he's
mm,
somebody who, is an odd duck for sure. Anybody who doesn't think so is missing something. He's definitely an odd guy. Doesn't make him bad or wrong, or not worth the time or anything. But he's just an odd fella, and I think that he probably related to him in some ways, where he was an artist and he was misunderstood, and you always want to root for that kind of person character.
Yeah. Well, and it's also just like this is the kind of person who deserves to have their story told too,
Absolutely,
for a
absolutely.
lot of reasons. So,
The
yeah.
look of him too, I mean, as far as the makeup and everything goes, it doesn't really look like John Merrick,
Yeah.
like the real Elephant Man. So they chose to make him look different.
Mhm.
He's just as deformed, but you would think that in showing him and putting so much attention to detail in his costume, because John Hurt would come in and do like 12 hours of
Yeah.
makeup and like, sit in it for hours and hours and hours and film, and it took forever to get him in and out of it, and they had to take a day off after, so he would do like one on, one off, because
Mhm.
it was just such a grueling process. And he would have it put on no matter what, like even if he was wearing clothes over it or everything, for continuity's sake.
Yeah,
So like
yeah.
they really put in the effort. I would think they'd be able to make some kind of a bodysuit underneath that he could just slip on like a shirt to match the like, edges and whatnot of the
Mm.
suit. But whatever, you would think they would want to go more accurate. They didn't. So I don't know whether that they chose to make him look different with like the big bulging forehead thing and
Mhm.
all that, which Merrick did not have.
Mhm.
I don't know what that choice was. I
Mhm.
don't know if Lynch was like creative liberty. I want to make him look like this for some reason. I don't know what that choice was, but they chose to go that route. But John Hurt, amazing.
Mhm.
Anthony Hopkins, incredible. Great stuff from both of them,
Yes.
and yeah, wonderful film.
Yeah. 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 So next
Next is
is
Dune.
Dune.
Um,
This was a really interesting time for us to watch this because we actually had just rewatched Dune Part 1 and 2. We showed it to the kids.
yeah, this
And
this put me on a bit of a Dune obsession.
yeah, a little bit of Dune kick.
So I watched Dune 1 and 2, the Denis Villeneuve films, with my kids and my wife, which I'd already seen, before, of course. Uh, Lynch's Dune I had seen some of,
Mm-hmm.
but never the whole thing in sequential order. I'd seen
Mm.
decent amount of scenes from it, but I don't think I'd ever sat down and watched them. And then I was like, well, if we watch the Denis films, we need to now get finally to Dune Prophecy. So we watched that on HBO, and then I went out and found the Dune miniseries from Sci-Fi, and I watched Dune, as our Frank Herbert's Dune, as well as Dune, Children of Dune,
Mm-hmm.
which are like 4.5 hours a piece. And then I started reading the Dune books. So I've been very obsessive with Dune
Thanks
over the
to,
last like two
yeah,
weeks. I've watched all of those, and been doing that pretty much exclusively. It's all I've been watching on my own is
yeah.
just Dune. So I've actually now seen the Dune story, as well as now having now I'm reading the comic adaptation of it currently. So I've seen this story play out 4 times, in 4 different iterations, modern, the 80s, and a sci-fi miniseries for television, as well
Yeah.
as a comic. So I have seen this story multiple different times in multiple different ways. Dune, David Lynch's Dune is unfortunately the worst of
Yeah.
those.
Yeah. I
I
haven't
hate
seen
to
the
say
others, but
that.
I can. It's such a bummer. It really is because I think that if you're familiar with the story of Dune, I can totally see why Lynch would be intrigued and want to make this and gravitate towards it. So much of Paul Atreides and just that story involves like very symbolic and again dreams and all kinds of stuff like that that I think Lynch would be really just fascinated by.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the problems with this movie is that I think there's like an hour of footage that's missing,
Oh
and
yeah.
it you feel it in the film. We don't spend nearly enough time with any of the plot points to really, like, I feel, get the essence of the story. And it's a shame because, like, as far as like the look of things, I
Yeah.
like the general sci-fi vibe. Like
Yeah.
I like the set designs and like the costumes and all that. Like I think that stuff is cool and fine. Like I don't have a this, the sandworm and all that.
Hmm.
I like
Yeah.
all of it.
Yeah. The style isn't the problem.
No, style wise, I think it's cool. Even acting wise, I think everybody's pretty much fine. But it's just that I think there's so much story that is missing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lynch worked on this, and he has said
Mm,
on many occasions he won't even talk about the movie. He doesn't want to have anything to do with the special features. He doesn't want to do a commentary. He doesn't want to do a revisited. He didn't even want to watch the Denis films. He said it's a very sore spot of
yeah.
his, and he sees this as his only failure as a filmmaker. And he mostly blames it on the fact that he did not get final cut. He wasn't given, control over his film,
Yeah.
and this was something he spent years and years of his life making, and he felt like, this was something that kind of took it out of him. I'm glad that this didn't stop him,
Yeah, me too,
right? I'm glad that he
obviously.
went on and made Blue Velvet and whatever comes after. But yeah, it's always a shame to hear. Now, I am very curious because it's Lynch on what behind the scenes with like Dino De Laurentiis and the production companies and all that. Like, I'm curious on what the pushback was. I can only assume that they wanted him to do a more accurate Dune adaptation, and
Mm.
Lynch wanted to do his own thing and have
Mm.
way more creative freedom and take artistic license and liberties with this. And I think that they probably pushed back and were like, no, you can't do that. That's too insane. We're trying to appeal to a mass audience, right? An audience, a lot of which would be Dune fans that are
Yeah.
coming to see a proper adaptation of, probably the most influential science fiction novel ever written. Having now watched it in so many different iterations, I can very easily say that this is the most influential science fiction novel of that I've ever seen. Just because it really obviously lended so much to other projects like
Mm.
Star Wars, and the list goes on. Like, I was watching, I was like, oh, this is where they got that. This is where this film got this thing, right? There's so much of that. Tremors, obviously,
Sure,
is
yeah.
taking from the sandworms, and Beetlejuice, and there's so
Sandworms.
many fucking
Yeah.
inspirations of Dune. Whether it's, it might even be because of Lynch's version, for all we know, but it is such an iconic novel from
Yeah.
1965. It had been out for a while. They'd had a very passionate fan base, and
Mm.
the people who are coming to see it, it's such dense material.
Mhm.
And I do wonder if behind the scenes Lynch was kind of wanting to do Lynch things,
Mm.
and they were like, no fucking way, we're not letting you do that. We gave you, who knows how much. I don't know what the budget on this, but it's got to be as big as budgeted film he ever did. And when you're putting that much money into it, they want you to return, a product that can be sold and consumed by the masses. A movie like this is supposed to be for a large audience, and if you make it too weird when it's already kind of dense, hard to follow material,
Mhm.
you're going to lose the audience instantaneously. And I
Mhm.
think that fight between them is probably what led to this project being an abject failure, is that you have two people who want totally different things trying to make something together, collaborate, and that never is going to work.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what I think would have been the source of the arguments, whether it's him, I don't know if he would have wanted to change anything of the story necessarily, or just kind of, add more imagery and kind of inject that surrealist element into it, which is funny to me too because like I think, if you have David Lynch making something and you've seen, granted he only has the Elephant Man and Eraserhead, I think maybe they take a look at Elephant Man and are like, okay, like we want something like this.
Yeah.
But Dune is such a cosmic and already kind of out there story, so it seems odd to me to hire this wonderful surrealist director and then not expect him to do some of that. But at any rate, this definitely is probably one my least favorite David Lynch thing. I don't think it's the worst movie ever made at all, but it is just not a good adaptation of Dune, and that's for sure. I have read the book, and yeah, it's not good as far as an adaptation goes. It is the first time that he starts working with Kyle MacLachlan, which is cool to see him real young.
Yeah.
Um, that's he remains like an actor that pops up a few times in some other Lynch works, obviously, probably most famously as Dale Cooper from Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was cool to see him here.
Yeah. It's a bummer of a project.
Yeah,
There is an extended version of this movie, which has like maybe
yeah,
40 or 50 more minutes of time, which, when we had said there was a bunch missing, would that fix the issues? I don't know. I don't really have a huge interest in watching this again, and a
yeah.
longer version at
I
that.
know.
Um, and I do think a part of that has to do with, the fact that, with the mini series that Sci-Fi put out, and the fact that we have the newer
Yeah,
adaptations with Timothy Chalamet and Josh Brolin in them. Um, it's kind of like you already have the superior versions, like
yeah.
where the mini series is a more like literal adaptation of the
Mm.
books, kind of like the Shining miniseries on TV, where you have that version of, if you want it more exact to the book, then here's that version. And if you want more of like an epic film
Mm-hmm.
version, then you have the Denis films. So I think it's like you already have the two perfect options between those two things, and Lynch's Dune for me is kind of like, and if you want the like 80s aesthetic and kind
Yeah,
of like that kind of style, then you have that version if you want that version, but
yeah.
that's the lowest on the totem pole for me. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that this film probably has a lot of nostalgia for some people too, though. Just being from that time
Sure,
period and everything.
of course.
So yeah.
Yeah, there's going to be people who love it. It was cool to see Brad Dourif in here.
Yes. Yeah.
I think this is probably the first time he worked with Everett McGill. Um, he's got, Jurgen Prochnow, I think is how you say his name. Sutter Kane.
Mm.
Patrick Stewart's in
Oh
here.
yeah, yeah.
Sting, of course, as Fade.
Sting. We almost
Um,
got the naked Sting scene, but we didn't.
yeah, Lynch wanted him nude,
Yeah.
dick out and everything, and Sting agreed to it. He was going to show everyone his stinger, and
Yeah, yeah.
they said no. The studio panicked and were like no, and they cut it. So you missed out on Sting's dick. Obviously, you've also got Sean Young in here
Mm.
from Blade Runner. This is
Oh
obviously,
yes, yeah.
so anyway,
Yeah.
I don't hate it.
I don't
It's not my least favorite Lynch film. We'll get there.
it's my least it's one of them. I think I have well, it is my least favorite, yeah. Yeah.
I think it's got
I
cool
don't
stuff
hate
in
it.
it.
I
I think it's
don't
got.
hate it.
I love the set designs.
Yes.
I love, some of the music. I like the vibe of it. It's just,
Mhm.
if this was the only Dune adaptation, and I watched the extended version, maybe I'd be bigger on this. But because I think the Timothy Chalamet movies are so beyond superior to this
Yes,
in
yeah.
every imaginable
Yeah.
way, which of course feels kind of unfair.
It does because this isn't the movie he wanted to make
That's
too.
true.
So it's kind of
And
like
plus we just got the
you're
technology now, and
yeah.
things are so
Yeah.
different. But yeah, I fucking love the Denis films so much. I think they're both phenomenal.
Yeah.
So it's going, and I saw this first too, right? So it's going up against something that I already love, and whatever. So anyway, Dune. I don't really have a whole lot to say
Yeah.
more on it. It's it's got its cool moments. It's got some weird shit in it too. That like creature thing that's out
Oh
in the
yeah.
cosmos, and I think is like,
I don't know
I
what
don't know,
that
that
is.
thing's
I
wild
don't know if
looking.
that's from the book because I don't remember. I read the book years ago, and it is, as we said, a very dense story. So if that's in the book, I did not remember it, but it is a weird creature thing that I still liked seeing. I
Yeah,
don't know what it is.
yeah.
So, um, yeah. So moving on.
Moving
Next is
on.
Blue Velvet. She
Baby wants to
wore
fuck.
blue. Baby wants to
Baby
fuck
wants
with
to fuck.
the nitrous. Good old Frank Booth.
So like my favorite piece of trivia I read, I was reading trivia on all of this shit while we were watching this or after watching this, and I learned a lot of really interesting things
Yeah,
for
it
sure
was
along
great
the
to
way.
hear all the trivia.
But my favorite one is that Dennis Hopper read
Yeah.
this script and said, after having read this horrendously awful, villainous piece of shit character, Frank Booth, I have to play Frank Booth. I am Frank Booth.
That's such a crazy
And
piece
it's
of
like, that
trivia.
is the most Dennis Hopper shit I've ever
Like,
heard in
what
my
do you
life.
mean?
If you've
You
ever
are
seen
Frank Booth.
if you've ever seen Dennis Hopper in an interview, if you've ever watched Dennis Hopper in a movie, I agree. He is Frank. He is the most fucking outlandish human. He is so wild. He is such a crazy person. I love it.
So I know I said that Eraserhead is kind of the quintessential Lynch film, but I think that Blue Velvet is really where we start to get into like the Lynch feels that
Yeah.
continue throughout these other movies.
Yeah.
We get the uh, mystery, this intrigue that starts kind
Yeah.
of
Murder
popping up, murder
mystery.
mystery, and sexuality, so much sexuality in his films, and it's so perverted, and I love how perverse it is.
Yeah.
Um,
This is clearly the framework for what would become Twin Peaks.
mm,
Right.
mm-hmm.
You got Kyle MacLachlan, you've got the murder mystery in the small town, the
Yeah.
at the diner, and they got the nightclub. They've got, like, it's all of the pieces. Like, honestly, you could say this is an alternate reality
Mm,
prequel
to Twin
to
Peaks.
Twin Peaks, that this is
Yeah.
Dale Cooper.
Yeah.
um
Laura Palmer. Well, Laura Palmer's kind of her own thing,
Right,
but
not her yet. Just
and
Coops,
Audrey,
like,
kind of. Yeah.
his origins of like
Yeah.
what got him to be a
Yeah.
detective.
That's what I think you said when we were watching this, and it's a fun way to look at it. It is not Dale Cooper though.
No.
It's Jeffrey Beaumont.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think this one is it's so fun, and this is where we also start to get introduced to the like dark humor that is also very common in Lynch films. Part of the trivia that you had read, so there's this really awful and unfortunately very iconic rape scene
Yeah.
that happens when Frank is uh, attacking Isabella Rossellini, her character, and
Baby wants to fuck.
it's very like, well, you had said that the trivia was that
Yeah.
apparently Lynch was like laughing off scene or off screen during this scene with Dorothy Valens getting like attacked.
Him and I definitely have a very similar sense of humor because this scene is fucking hilarious to me.
It's awful though. It
It
is like
is.
so horrible,
It's
but
so
there is
uncomfortable it
this,
makes you laugh.
yes, there is
Yes.
this deep like discomfort that's happening. And yeah, this is also, I would say, like the beginning of the very unique like Lynch dialogue too. He has this, it's kind of like how Wes Anderson movies have that very specific like snappy like way of talking.
Yeah, it's a specific
Instead with
cadence.
Lynch, yeah, there's this specific cadence that's very dreamlike and weird and reality adjacent dialogue. Like none of it sounds like things you would actually ever say to somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not believable at all.
No.
And that I think starts happening in this film and then carries on throughout others. Um, yeah, I love this one. I think this one is fantastic. I love Frank Booth. I think he's awful,
Yeah.
but he's so funny and terrible.
I think that's, when it comes to Lynch films, I think the thing that makes them for me, his two features here in a row have these really iconic performances of these horrible villainous people played by Dennis Hopper, and Willem Dafoe. And
Mm.
that's like peak quintessential Lynch for me. Like I need these kinds of characters for me to truly enjoy my time with like a true Lynch film. I
Mm.
like that insanely disturbing, over the top performance that you can't get out of your head, and it's just going to stick with you. And Frank Booth makes this whole fucking film for me.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, having now been somebody who in the past was a bit of a Lynch hater, I will say that not only do we line up in a dark humor sense, but I also have to give the guy credit for being such a horn dog,
Yeah.
and he's got such a sexuality, but like he
Yes.
loves titties. Holy shit, they're everywhere in his
Well,
movies, and I love it.
there's a big focus in his films on female sexuality and like sexual abuse really, and just how women, like there's so much in so many of his things that center around that, about around women being abused and used as sexual objects, and then the kind of the power that they have sexually. There's a definite fascination with all of that. And I had, mentioned earlier that there's like a trope of having a blonde in his films, but this film also introduces the other thing, which is that he likes to kind of juxtapose blondes and brunettes, and this, different like aspects uh, of women, and maybe like the societal like expectations of them. Like you have the innocence, and then you have this like a darker sexuality that
Yeah,
comes out,
yeah.
and that happens in so many of the films, and definitely in Twin Peaks. Laura Dern obviously is in this, and
Hmm.
I think she's just wonderful. She's I think 19
Yeah,
in this, so she's very young, but she's so cute.
yeah.
And I think she just has such an expressive face, and I think I'm very happy that her and Lynch kind of continue to work together. Um, because yeah, I think she as an actress, I think really gets him and like his vision. So her and Kyle MacLachlan, you ever heard of the chicken dance, chicken
Yeah.
walk? That's sort of interesting.
Yeah, their romance is definitely odd,
It is, yeah.
but that fits the film for sure. And yeah, I think that Lynch likes to show in this film in particular, it's the idealistic, 50s kind of ideal lifestyle of like the white picket fence. It literally starts with like a white picket
Yes,
fence and
yeah.
the flowers, and then um, what people are supposed to be striving towards, but then underneath that there's a darkness, like you had said.
Well,
um,
yeah, I mean, literally kind of represented not only by his father being in the hospital, but by the ear that he finds,
yeah,
you know. Uh, yeah.
yeah, is this one is great.
Yeah, I think this is a phenomenal movie.
Yeah, I don't this one's pretty straightforward. there's
Mhm.
some there's some Lynchian type of like, I don't 100% know what this or that means, couple little moments, and of course there's a lot of like weirdo type of scenes with
Just odd
yeah,
characters, and he loves to put just very normal looking people, but like normal in kind of a little bit of a weird way. I know we're
yeah,
using weird a lot, but it's
um,
a good adjective for most of this stuff.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean, as I said, could we sit here and talk about this
Yeah,
film for an hour?
of course. We
Yes.
got to move
And
on.
moving
We've
on to
already
we're already over an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we've only talked about four films,
Four
four
films.
films
So moving
of
on.
nine. So we do, yeah,
We got to move on,
run through
unfortunately.
these.
Um
Wild at Heart,
oh my god.
Wild at Heart.
this has this is I think
Oh, she's gonna say it.
this is my favorite David Lynch film.
Hmm.
Um I
This is why I gotta show you True Romance, and this is clearly, I mean, this couldn't be more obvious of an inspiration for Quentin Tarantino's like romance movies that he wrote and sold off like True Romance and most obviously Natural Born Killers. This is
Mm.
such an obvious inspiration for Natural Born Killers.
It's just such a fun and sexy movie. And it has so
Ugh.
much heart to it too, and it's wild at heart.
Yeah.
It's got such tragedy, but like Nicolas Cage and Laura Dern, I just feel like as Sailor and Lula, they are iconic in this.
Yeah.
They're so perfectly cast together, and I just think that it's phenomenal. Yeah, I mean, this is the highway movie, right? Like aside from Lost Highway, like this is like they're on the road for a lot of this film. And it's really cool that Laura Dern's mother
Yeah.
plays her plays Lula's mother in the movie too. And I actually think she's a fantastic actress.
She
I
also
love her performance in
she's
this.
also in Inland Empire with her as well.
Yes, she's in
Yeah.
Inland Empire for a brief scene, but
Yeah.
she's a main character in this one.
Mm-hmm.
And I love her performance.
Yeah.
This is the movie that is like so clearly inspired from Wizard of Oz. There are
Yeah.
so many Wizard of Oz references and like little call outs and such, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
And I want to watch like all of these movies. I haven't, but I want to watch like David Lynch talk about them. Like just I know he won't tell you what they mean, but I just want to hear like what he will say about them, like whether it's where the inspiration came from or what he was, whatever he was thinking about making them. But yeah, what do you think?
Uh, yeah, it's a bit of a shame that him and Nicolas Cage never worked together again.
Yes, I agree.
Um, yeah, Nick
Mm.
Cage. This is Nick Cage definitely at his Nick Cageiest.
Yes.
Um,
The
obviously the
snakeskin
snakeskin
jacket is a
jacket,
symbol of my individuality.
which as I said in the trivia, Cage brought this jacket with him onto set and was like, "I want to wear this jacket in the film," and Lynch like wrote it into the film for him. So this jacket is part of his individuality. Like he really did want to use that. And if you can watch interviews with Cage at that time, most famously the one where he comes out and does like a front flip and starts throwing dollar bills into the audience, and he's just so high on cocaine. He's making this around the time he was making stuff like Raising Arizona and whatnot. Cage, a lot of people give shit to Cage for how ridiculous he is, but also like how many shitty movies he made after he kind of bankrupted himself with all this shit. But Cage is he's such a wildly entertaining person to watch.
Yes, he is
Like
truly.
I grew up watching Valley Girl, which is one of my favorite films of all time. And he's definitely much more, um, you know, like normal in that movie. He still has some Cage isms, but when he was like finally unleashed in movies like this, Wild at Heart and Raising Arizona and beyond, oh my god, so many titles I could come up with right now. There's just so many wild performances from him. And yeah, similar Vampire's Kiss.
Oh my
Holy
god,
shit.
that's
I'm a
so good.
vampire.
Yeah, I
But I love Cage when when he works, he fucking works better than anybody ever at
he
being entertaining.
yes, I don't know why he didn't work with Lynch again. I do wish that had happened at some point. I don't know
Maybe
what.
he was a little too much for Lynch.
Maybe I
He's
don't
like,
know
holy
what the
shit, this guy's
relationship was like or
nutcase.
anything, but as far as this movie goes, I mean, yeah, I just feel like the casting is perfect. You had said as part of the trivia that Laura Dern and Nicolas Cage took like a
Oh
long
yeah,
road trip to
to
Las
Vegas.
Vegas
Yeah.
together to like get to know each other and just get more comfortable because they do have a lot of sex scenes in this.
Mm-hmm.
And the sex scenes are really sexy and really great. It's this is another movie where like it is at its heart, it's a comedy, it's dark comedy, it's a romance story, but there's these like really dark aspects to like Lula being raped by
Oh my
her
god, yeah,
uncle
yeah,
and having an abortion, and her mother having an affair on her father and burning her father alive and like all
crazy
this
stuff.
stuff. And there's this very this actually happens in Eraserhead too that you had kind of pointed out, but um, there's an interesting dynamic between, I forget her name, Lula's mommy. Lula's mommy wants to fuck when she's like coming at him in the bathroom.
Oh
Like
yeah,
like the mother coming on to like the boyfriend or whoever.
mm-hmm.
And so she's got like this jealousy
Yeah,
around Lula and Sailor. Um, yeah, and this is also we didn't really talk about it in Blue Velvet, but the soundtrack to this is amazing.
Yeah,
There's so many really just wonderful songs in this, very iconic stuff, and yeah, I love it. I think like one of my favorite scenes or sequences is when they are. It's right when they're driving on the highway at night, and Sailor just kind of tells her I think this is what he says right before. I'm pretty sure he tells her that like he knew her dad and that which she had never like had known before. Like he kind of reveals this and it sort of shatters a bit of the illusion of this, fantasy that they're living in at the
yeah.
moment. And then they find the accident on the side of the road at night with
Cheryl and
Cheryl and
Finn.
Finn.
Yeah,
And it's I don't know, there's something about that whole sequence that I think is just so like tragic and haunting, and like with her character being like, where's my lipstick, like where's my wallet, my mother's gonna kill me, and she's just like bleeding out of her head, and just like really sad and very memorable to me.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, wildly entertaining movie.
Yes.
If you're a fan of like Natural Born Killers and you haven't seen this movie, then it's an absolute must. A few other pieces of info here. Number one, this is based on a book series. I think there's like 6 books in the franchise of
Mm-hmm.
novels with
Yeah.
Sailor and Lula. Number two, Laura Dern is just, I mean, as sexy gets in this movie. She's so fucking cute and sexy in this movie. It's insane.
Oh gosh,
We
yeah.
do get to see
She's
her
always
naked
like,
quite a bit. She always hands. She
Sailor.
always
She's always
has
got
her
like
head,
her
her hand
hand
on
on
her
her
head
head.
throughout the
So
like
funny.
90% of the movie. If you watch, her hand is somewhere up
She's
on top of her head because it's like how women posed for
yeah.
magazine
Yeah.
covers. So I think that was is an attempt to frame her in that way. But she, oh my god, I never had a thing for Laura Dern. I think I was introduced to her in Jurassic Park, like most
Mm.
people.
Yeah.
I don't think I had seen her before, and she's pretty. I mean, I always thought she was good looking in Jurassic Park and maybe other things I had seen her in, but fuck,
Yeah, in
she
this
is so
movie.
sexy in this
In
movie.
this
It's
movie.
like it's like a top 10 sexiest performance
Yeah.
kind of movie for me. It's just like, wow, she's hot
She's
in this
so
movie.
and she's just so cute too.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think Nicolas Cage is and her like their chemistry is just wonderful.
It also reminded me, of course, of California with Brad Pitt and Juliette
Mm.
Lewis. They're
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
kind of dynamic as well.
Yeah.
And then lastly, Willem Dafoe. He doesn't
Oh my
in the
god, yeah, we didn't even
movie
talk
a
about him.
ton.
Oh
I mean, he
gosh.
probably only enters the movie in the last 30 minutes and maybe only makes 10 minutes, 15 minutes of screen time at best. But the scene where he comes on to her
Oh
in,
my
in
god.
the in the hotel room,
One of the
um,
most uncomfortable scenes
his
ever.
fucking teeth. He's just
He's
God,
so
another
psycho looking
another
in this.
Willem Dafoe, like another character actor like Nicolas Cage that's like I don't know, man. I don't know who like my favorite character actor of all time is, but Willem Dafoe has got to be. He's got to be in the conversation. He's got to be in that top 3 area of just like he's so fucking
He's so
crazy, and I
crazy.
love him so much.
And that's
He's
such
a death that I would take very poorly,
yeah. Such an awful scene. So horrible. I hate that whole scene.
and just like
Um
there is something Kaylee pointed out that was pretty funny where um they put the pantyhose over their faces, and it's like
oh
when they get
yeah.
the close
When they
up
go
on
to
them,
rob the
they
feed
look
store.
exactly like themselves.
I
It
know. I'm
doesn't
like,
hide any of
what?
their features in their face at
It's
all.
so funny.
So I thought that was pretty funny, and it actually reminds me very much of Raising Arizona. He also puts the pantyhose over his face and robs a liquor store. This is different. I don't even know what the fuck they're robbing in this movie. But yeah, he shoots the guy, and what's his name? Bobby something.
Yeah, William Dafoe's
Yeah,
character
right
is
there.
Bobby Peru.
Peru.
And
He's so fucking funny. He's so funny in this movie. He's such a
yeah.
ski like a skis ball. And this is Henry Dean Stanton's
Yep.
first. Yeah,
Henry
he's the
Dean
love
Stanton's in
interest.
this. Isabella Rossellini
Yeah.
is also in this. Grace Zabriskie, I'm not sure
Oh
how to say
yeah,
her name, but she
she's a regular.
Laura Palmer's mother, like, yeah, and so she comes up a lot. And then Laura Palmer herself is in this too.
Yeah,
And
she plays
yeah,
the like, Glinda.
Shirley, the good witch at the end.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right, moving on.
Um,
Obviously, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me was next. We didn't watch
yeah,
that, so
we'll probably skip over that one.
yeah, we have
Twin
to.
Peaks is this whole other like
Yeah,
animal.
yeah,
Obviously, insanely important. Maybe the most well-known David Lynch anything. So,
sure.
and one of my favorite things ever. So, if you've never watched Twin Peaks, go watch
And
that.
we wouldn't have like X
Oh
Files
my god,
or I mean, so many
it's
things.
like one of the most important television like shows ever. So,
Yeah,
next up we have Lost Highway.
I hadn't seen this since it came out.
I had never seen this. This was my
Yeah,
first time watching it, which
yeah,
was fantastic. This is Bill Pullman
yeah.
and Patricia Arquette, who's like really gorgeous in this.
Mm-hmm.
So striking. Her eyes are like insane.
See her boobies too.
Yes,
He
this
was
is
able to get all of these actresses who normally would not do it, and even with the last one, with Laura Dern,
Mhm.
she had even said like she always had a no nudity clause that she wasn't going to do any, but she felt it was right for the movie, and I guess Lynch has a way of talking these actresses that have these names and are just like, no, I won't do it. He seems
Well,
to get them
so
all
one thing
to
is
do it.
that we talked about this during watching them is that
It's
you
so
can't
important to
it's
the
so
movie.
important.
It's
You
so
can't
fucking
take the
important.
sexuality and the nudity out because it is meant to be there. Like if you take all the sex scenes and the nudity out of Wild at Heart, you don't have the same film.
Not at
You don't
all.
have
Not
anywhere
even
close
close to
to
the
it.
same film.
Same thing in this movie. It's
Yeah.
so important.
And Patricia Arquette had said that, she pushed herself here because she wanted to have her characters and her acting kind of stand apart from who she was. And this is like one of
Mm,
the reasons she agreed to do the nudity was because it was so the opposite of who she is. In real life, Patricia Arquette does not like anyone to see her naked. And for her character to be so sexually open with her body, it was very important for her as a distinction between herself the person and herself the actress, which I thought was actually really cool. And of
yeah.
course I just wanted to see her titties, so I was happy with that. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I think it is really cool. Yeah, and I think she gives a great performance in this. This one I would say is where things start to get kind of like weird, like
Oh,
weirder.
this is
Like
such a bizarre
this is
movie.
having only seen it once now, I 1,000% I'm like I need to watch it again, like and again, a couple more times to maybe get more of a solid like feel for it. I liked it a lot. I didn't dislike it at all. I think this is a great movie. I think it's very scary though.
Yeah.
It has, even though this is another one that it does not have a horror label, it's labeled as a psychological thriller, drama, mystery, thriller, which it is all of those things. But there's some really creepy stuff in here with what's his face?
Robert Blake.
Yeah, Robert Blake's character, the mystery man.
The guy who fucking went on trial for murdering his wife, when
Yeah,
this movie
mystery
is
man.
about murdering, somebody murdering their wife. And Lynch even said that his inspiration for this movie was the OJ Simpson trial, which is someone murdering their wife. So it's kind of odd that the mystery man, who is kind of a stand-in for the evil within Bill Pullman's character, for wanting to get back at his wife for cheating on him, or at least he thinks she's cheating on him and thinks she's a whore, and he wants to kill her. And so he creates this like dual persona, and the mystery man kind of is a stand-in for the killer instinct in him. At least that was my interpretation of it anyway. It's weird that he did cast a guy who went on to kill his
Yeah,
wife,
it's a really weird
even
synchronicity.
though he got away
Um,
with it in court. He then was found liable for the murder
yeah,
later in a civil court and ordered to pay like $30 million or something to the family. But he's a fucking
definitely gives you,
creepy son of a bitch in this
yeah,
movie.
yeah. Knowing that, like, even if you hadn't known that, I would still think he's really scary. But knowing it too definitely adds this other layer of like, what? Um, yeah. One of my favorite scenes from this movie, the one that kind of stuck with me the most, is when Bill Pullman's character, Fred Madison, he's at the like party in the beginning, and the mystery man comes in and
Yeah,
is like, I'm in your
I'm your
house,
house.
like
Yeah,
we've met
it's a
before, I'm
great
in your
scene.
house, and he calls him on the phone and he picks up, like, I think that's so scary.
It is.
It
I
has
okay.
such a, like, I don't know, it feels very unreal, and that's what, like, freaks me out, is that they're in this environment with all these people moving around, and then you have this very surreal thing happening, you know?
It's got a nightmare quality to it
Yeah.
for sure, and I love it. But in reality, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense in the sense of like all you have to do is have a fucking guy at the house that sounds like you,
Well, sure,
right?
but that's, yeah,
If
it's
it was a
definitely not.
video call,
Yeah.
then if he could do FaceTime, if we had FaceTime back then and he could FaceTime the guy, then you would think he's an identical twin. So I don't know. It's not really that hard to explain why a guy is at your, I'd be like, why is there a guy at my house having broken in who sounds like you? What is
Well,
this elaborate ruse? Like,
yeah,
I wouldn't
yeah.
buy that it was him, but it's because it's the dream logic of the movie, and at that point he's already kind of in a state
Yeah,
that he buys into it. And as I said, everything within these movies for the most part, once we get into the more Lynchian type films, and Lost Highway is one of the most Lynchian films, there's a dream logic to everything.
yeah.
He buys it because when you're in a dream you buy it. You
Oh,
don't
sure.
question things when you're in a dream, you
Yeah.
just roll with them, as where you're like lucid and awake, and right there you do question reality and logic. But with
Yeah.
these things you just don't, you just go with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like, that they're getting these videotapes of the house, and
It's
that this
creepy.
kind of, it's very creepy, and it ends up being like the whole story is kind of this weird loop. I think the ending is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you had said that that uh, Fred Madison's house
Is
is
Lynch's
is
house.
Lynch's house,
Yeah.
which I was like, and that his furniture was like custom made, because I was like thinking before you had even said that to me, I was like looking at the furniture, being like, that's some really interesting furniture. Like, I wonder if Lynch like designed it or whatever. So
That's kind of interesting.
that's sort of
Sort
interesting.
of. I knew it was sort of. I knew it was sort
So
of.
funny.
Damn it.
Such a funny scene from Blue Velvet. Yeah, but I think that this one, I definitely like it, it has a very jarring change.
Yes.
Once Fred Madison goes to prison for
Yeah.
murdering his wife,
Yeah.
then we obviously have that sequence where like this door opens up, and he becomes another person, and we stick with that character for a while, who I don't
Yeah.
even know what that I don't remember what his name
It's
is.
probably one of those faceless ones
I'm
there. Who's
assuming
that?
Ed.
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know. Um, yeah, it's pretty jarring of a switch for sure. Uh, I think it is obviously intentional and meaningful. Like, we had kind of been
Oh,
talking about
sure.
it, a few different like interpretations of like maybe like a younger version of himself, because it does feel like that's inside his mind.
Yeah.
Uh, you know,
I really enjoyed this up
yeah.
until that switch. I think that that's unfortunately where this film took a detour that I didn't care for,
Mm,
on the Lost Highway. Uh, I was really enjoying everything with Pullman and Patricia Arquette and that story, and Robert Blake coming in as the mystery man. And like, I was into that stuff, and I
yeah.
really liked the idea of like there's a different person in his cell, and who is this person? But then Bill Pullman disappears from the film for like over an hour, and while I did like the rest of everything going on within that stuff with Patricia Arquette and Robert Loggia
Yeah, I was
and
gonna
whatever,
say.
I really enjoyed all that stuff, but I really didn't care for the kid who
Yeah.
played the younger version of him, or like the stand-in of like him reverting to his childhood to try to escape his adult life, and what came with the reality of being an adult. I think this is supposed to be representative of the choices he had at the time, where he had a woman who was faithful to him, and really loved him, and he chose the more dangerous option because it was something that was more alluring at the time. And so he went off with the woman that people were trying to like warn him about. He saw
Mm,
all the red flags in her, and that's what ultimately led him down a darker path. And he could have had, I think it's Natasha Gregson, character, fucking beautiful,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
cool, so hot, so such a classic pick. but there's always like, so like even with Blue Velvet, he has like the more obvious good girl,
Right.
the one he should be with, the more obvious choice, and then the bad girl,
Yeah.
the angel and the devil, the two different paths, and the one takes you down one path and then the other. um I just the kid feels so 90s, and I
Mm.
just don't care for him that much. I don't hate him, and so therefore I didn't hate everything with him or anything. I did really like the film overall, and I
Yeah.
feel like I have a good enough interpretation for myself.
Yeah.
Whatever you guys got from it could be your own thing. We of course could sit here for an hour and talk about just interpretations of these movies. But unfortunately, he was the downside of the film for me, and he became the main character, so
Yeah.
that hurt the film. But otherwise, very very interesting film
Yeah.
that I
I
enjoyed.
I didn't have that much of a problem with him, I would say.
Yeah.
I I really like Robert Loggia's a scene where he is like ranting about um like car length and stuff and tailgating. I
Yeah.
think that that's super funny, and you had a really cool trivia about that scene because I guess Robert Loggia wanted the role of Frank Booth in Blue Velvet, and he came to like an audition, but the role had already been cast, and he waited for like 3 hours only for Lynch to come out and tell him like the we already filled the role. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. And I guess that there was like he had a like a
Big blow
freak
up.
out,
Yeah.
and Lynch like never forgot it.
Yeah.
And so that's what became this scene
Yeah.
when he called him to ask him to be a part of this movie. So I think that's pretty funny that he was like, I remember when you like reamed me, like I'm gonna
Yeah.
have you do that to this guy that's tailgating
Right. Right.
you.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, for me this movie is really about disassociation. I think that
Hmm.
that's like the big feeling that I got. And I think that there is a bit of like wanting things that you can't have, and this unattainable um ideal of somebody that you just will never get. And yeah, like I said, I really love the ending. I think this is a really wonderful film, and one that I'm looking forward to watching again and getting
Hmm.
more just more from. So
Yeah, this one doesn't does this one is where we start to get into the territory of like, I don't really have a clear answer. This gets more
yeah,
back to like Eraserhead. There's definitely scenes that I'm like, I don't know. We
sure,
get Gary Busey in here
yeah,
as the dad. He's not very Gary Busey though. I was expecting, because he was in a Lynch movie, we're going to get more of like a Willem Dafoe, Dennis Hopper kind of
no,
performance out of
he's
him. But
he's
he's a
just
pretty
very
straight laced
normal kind
father,
of guy.
which is
Yeah.
kind of weird. And this is Richard Pryor's last movie. He makes a
Mm.
pretty small appearance here as like the boss of our kid. It was cool to see him. I was really surprised. I was like, "Is that Richard Pryor? What the fuck?" And then I found out like he died like shortly after. And this was his last film. He was looking pretty rough in the movie, so it doesn't surprise me. But yeah, cool. Much different than my first watch of it, which
Hmm.
I had no idea what the fuck was going on. But this time, I feel like I got a pretty clear idea of what's going on, save for a few little things here and there that I can't cobble together. But Patricia
Mm.
Arquette's sexy as hell in this one as well. He's very good with sexuality. He really knows
Yes.
how to direct sexiness.
Yes, he does. Yeah, he's a little pervert, and we love him.
And next up, the
Next up,
least
the
Lynchian
most
film,
opposite of all of the things we just said.
and this will probably come of no surprise because of how I've been throughout this. Not saying I don't like, I've actually enjoyed all of these. But this is probably my favorite of his films. Um, the Straight Story. And it's not just because it's a straight story, which I think is kind of funny because obviously our main character here is named Alvin Straight. So it is the straight story, but it's also a straight film that Lynch typically wouldn't make. And there's like nothing surrealist about this movie. It is very straightforward. And also, they shot this in linear order, they shot it in sequential, order. So it was filmed straight as well,
Yeah.
which most films aren't. So there's a lot of entendres there with this, you know,
Straight
title.
story. Yeah.
But I just, what a wonderful movie.
Oh my gosh.
I'd
Yeah.
never even heard of this thing. It's on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
A lot of Lynch's films are on Max right now for anyone wanting to watch these.
Mm.
Some of them aren't. Some of these you got to look for in different places, but this one's on Disney Plus. This was a Disney movie, rated G.
Yeah.
After having made Lost Highway, he went and made a Disney film rated
Very
G.
change
This is
of
like
big
George
change of
Miller
pace.
making Babe Pig in the City. This is very odd,
Yeah.
you know, and you're making like, you know, Mad Max movies, and then you go make a Babe movie, a Babe sequel. It's really wild, but what a wonderful, wonderful movie.
Yeah.
Like Sissy Spacek is fantastic, but our main character here, who actually got an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. I think he lost to Kevin Spacey in American Beauty, I think is what it was. But Richard Farnsworth,
Yeah.
what a one! He was dying of bone cancer during this filming. He knew he was, and this is going to be his last hurrah. So I couldn't have loved this more. This is like that classic story of perseverance, and just like, you know, it's a very American movie of a guy who has it's a slice of life type of movie, but it's that, like, the first person to swim the English Channel, you
Yeah.
know, with that kind of movie. And I
Yeah.
loved every second of it.
Yeah, I thought this was wonderful too. It's so sweet and so heartfelt, and just something that really is like, you watch a movie like this and it kind of puts everything into perspective for you.
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
know, just like seeing somebody kind of dealing with the aging process and getting closer to the end, and just, you know, I think that that's something that everybody should think about, you know, at some point. And if you don't think about it, I think it's important to reflect on it. uh you know, he Alvin makes this long journey to see his brother, who he hasn't spoken to in 10 years,
Yeah.
because they got into some dumb argument. And there's just like, that's it just really makes your heart kind of like pang to think like, we're both close to dying, like I don't want to die without saying
That
sorry and
clearing the
making
air.
amends.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's it's just so sweet. It's got such a sweet message, and everybody that he meets along the way, um you know, just like seeing his little impact on all these people and how like inspired by him they are, and like his stubbornness and determination to get there on this little lawnmower is so just, it's very beautiful. And I think that he, like, the actor does such a wonderful job at portraying this character, this
Absolutely.
person.
Yeah. You couldn't love him more.
Yeah,
He's the lovable grandpa.
very lovable. And one of the things that I think, you know, the fact that he's going like 5 miles an hour,
Literally. Yeah.
nobody travels that slow anymore, like
No.
ever. You know, I mean, I'm sure if you walk and stuff, but I mean, most of the time we're in cars or on buses or planes or trains or whatever.
Yeah.
And so he really gets to kind of enjoy and appreciate the journey. And there's also something to be said about that, because yeah.
Well, it's like,
So
you know, it's just like it's its final journey, even though, you know, the real person lived for 3 years longer after this.
yeah.
The trip took them 6 weeks to make, going 5 miles per hour. They went a couple hundred miles. And he was just, yeah, just super determined. His lawnmower kept breaking down along the way, and he'd have to find ways to fix it. And yeah, the impact he made on the people along the way, and the tragedy, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, this guy's lived a life, as
Yeah.
anybody at that age has. And, you know, somebody who fought in World War II, and
Yeah.
he has this tragic story of someone he accidentally killed while he was over there, and how much that's haunted him his whole life. And then he tells the story about his daughter, and he had like a bunch of kids, like tons and tons of them. But Sissy Spacek's got some kind of mental ailment. I don't know what it is exactly, an autism of some sort, maybe.
And autism.
Well, yeah, it's a spectrum, right? So like,
Yeah.
I don't know which, I don't know how much, but she's
It would
definitely
just be
got,
autistic.
yeah.
But I like an
Yeah,
autism.
an autism. She's got one of
An
the autisms.
Yeah. Uh,
And we find out this story of her kid who gets burned, and then they get all taken from her because they blame it on her
yeah.
because of how she is. And from what he's saying, it doesn't seem to be her fault. She's a great mother, but because of her, how different she is, they think it's her. It kind of reminds me of the movie I Am Sam with Sean Penn, which
Mm,
made me cry harder than any movie I've ever watched in my life. So yeah, this one really just really, really, really resonated with me because
mm,
it's that movie about a man who's lived a life and can share that life with others and impact their world. This little hitchhiker girl that he comes across, and the family that he comes across, and the stories they tell, and it's a very it's a dialogue heavy movie.
yeah.
It doesn't there's nothing really exciting about it. No
No,
big event
it's
happens or anything. It's just kind of straightforward. He just drives a little tractor, he gets to his brother at the end.
yeah,
I could tell you that it's not really like a spoiler. But it's the journey that's what
yeah,
matters. This is that perfect example of a movie where it's like I could tell you the whole movie, but it's the journey that
yeah,
matters.
yeah,
Like, because they made a movie out of it, he makes it. That, like, all that stuff. Like, you can guess where this is heading, but it's all about his journey along the way and
yeah.
watching him do it. And what a wonderful film.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is definitely much more in line with like the Elephant Man, and I think this just shows, Lynch has. I mean, it's obvious to me before that, but he just has real talent, and he can tell a straight story and direct a straight film, and
He probably did this to
you
push
know,
himself to, like,
maybe,
can I make a movie
yeah.
like this?
It's fantastic. It is very much like one of the least Lynch things you'll ever watch, it feels. I think, yeah, I mean, even the
You didn't even know
dialogue.
this existed
I had
either.
no idea this existed at all. I literally had never known that this existed.
Thanks to Daniel Siegel for
So,
pointing this out to us, because he was like, make sure you do not skip this
thank
movie.
you. Yeah.
Everybody, overlooks this movie, and no one even knows it exists most of the time. And I was like, what? And when it was on Disney Plus, that was even like, what?
It's fantastic. It's watch it. You can watch it with your kids, like it's
Absolutely.
rated G, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's wonderful. Really
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
next up we're almost at the end with the
Yeah.
last two.
Yeah.
So,
Mulholland
good old
Drive.
Mulholland Drive.
Yeah, this is usually regarded as his best film from most people. This is like the quintessential David Lynch film.
Yeah, I think this is
That's
probably his most
revered.
um like normie, like people know about, not normie film, but like regular like non-film buffs, I feel like, have heard
Well,
of
yeah,
Mulholland Drive.
Roger Ebert
Uh
was famously a Lynch hater, and he even gave this like a positive review. I think
mhm.
this is the only movie he ever gave a positive review to in Lynch's career. I can't imagine that's true though, because how could he have not liked The Elephant Man or
Oh
a,
my
a
gosh.
Straight Story?
Yeah.
But like of the Lynch films, because this feels like a Lynch film. So like of the Lynch films, he famously hated them, and seemed to really enjoy this one. So this one seems to be a bizarre Lynch story that's more digestible for the masses,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is interesting. It is a bizarro film for sure. When I remembered it, I watched it when it came out. I thought it was very straightforward. Now, having went back and rewatched it, it's definitely not. But I've been watching some breakdown videos on this one. None of the other ones thus far, but I was watching some on this, and man, people fucking love this movie. Like,
Oh yeah.
there's some videos on YouTube where I was like, "This is the greatest film of the 21st century," which I was like, "We're only 25 years into the 21st century. Calm down."
Yeah.
But yeah, they said so far, and of course, but yeah, Naomi Watts.
Yes.
Get
Oh
to
my
see her
gosh.
boobies too.
You do.
Yeah,
Yay, Lynch. Yeah,
my man.
I love this movie. It's, I mean, what can you say? It's Mulholland Drive. It's like this, it's everything that you, at least, or that I think about when I think of like Hollywood and being like an actor, and just the vibe of Hollywood. Like, I think you had said that kind of or not reminded you, but like something like Starry Eyes, right? Like we
Oh,
have
sure.
even Neon Demon to an
Yeah,
extent, right? Like these
this is
like
definitely,
starlet stories gone wrong.
yeah.
And that's not all this is about, obviously, because there's the second half of the film, or at least the ending of the film, like we get a very a very dark look into things. But like, yeah, I think that Naomi Watts is just so perfect in this. I think you had said some really cool stuff about the trivia with her, and that she was like going to quit acting, and um, was convinced to keep like working until this film was released, and that she
By
had
Nicole
like,
Kidman.
yeah, she had like no money or no insurance when this was being filmed, and was like contemplating suicide at
Yeah,
one
she
point.
decided like she
Um,
was driving on Mulholland Drive
yeah,
and was considering killing herself before she ever even got cast in this, and that's super
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I think that's again kind of a weird synchronicity that is, happens with Lynch at times. But yeah, the story of Betty coming, this bright-eyed little like starlet coming to Hollywood to become an actress, and finding a mystery woman in her aunt's apartment who's been in a car accident, and just living this idealized movie type life, like a murder mystery type of thing. I think all of that is fantastic, and I there's just some really amazing scenes in this. One of my favorites from this movie, I have a couple, but the diner scene with I always forget what that actor's name is, Patrick Fischler.
Mm-hmm.
The diner scene where he's meeting the guy from Ball the House of Usher.
Yeah,
And he's telling him about this dream that he had where you were standing right over there, and then there's a guy that I can see through the walls, and that is just so great. And then the look of the man back there, and I just love all of that. I think that's so fantastic. And of course it obviously resurfaces later when we have Betty or Diane
yeah,
at that same diner trying to put a hit on her ex-lover
yeah.
slash
And she looks around the
rival,
establishment and
sees him.
sees a guy who like makes an impact on her
Yeah,
memory, and she like implants
yeah,
him in her like nightmare.
yeah.
Um,
I love that. I think that, so this movie, like what it does so well is that, like, because the first half of the film is Diane kind of imagining things or trying to feel better about whatever's happening, but everything ties in to things later on. Like all of those symbols that she's, or all of the images or whatever that she's trying to ignore and deny, like her subconscious is still bringing it up in some way, being like, you can't actually avoid this. Like it's still here.
yeah,
Um, my other favorite scene is in Club Silencio when the guy comes out and is like, this is an illusion, and like all the the music's playing but nobody's actually like playing it live, and then we get this like really evocative like singer who comes out and is singing this song in Spanish, and um what's her name, I forget this actress's name, Laura Haring, and Naomi Watts's characters like Betty and Rita are sitting there like crying and having like, I just think that it gives me like goosebumps every time I see it. I
yeah,
think it's such a cool scene.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's a unique, interesting experience for sure, and one that you absolutely have to cobble together while watching it through so many different ideas. I think that Lynch had supposedly released a list of like 10 clues to figuring out this movie that he had put on
Hmm.
like DVDs and whatever to like look out for, and to give you an idea of what he was going for.
Hmm.
So I'm sure Kayla would be very interested
I
in
would.
looking at that list of
Yeah.
things. Um, but yeah, I think it's, I think for the most part, you can figure out most things in here. I'm sure some people feel like they have 100% of the film figured out.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Um, and whether or not Lynch would agree with them,
Yeah.
obviously now we'll never know. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's a very interesting kind of like almost noir type of
Yeah.
film, set in modern Hollywood, but has like a classic Hollywood feel to it.
Mhm.
This is, I think, the first time he works with Justin Theroux,
Mm.
um, and yeah, I mean they're very once again, I mean talk about a very sexy,
Oh, sure. We get
scene between our lesbian lovers
yeah,
here.
yeah.
He really knows how to film sexuality and make it very alluring and
Mhm.
have purpose, right? It's not gratuitous. It's not exploitive. It feels very
Yeah,
purposeful.
it doesn't feel pornographic. None of
No,
his sex scenes feel like
but it
I
is
just want
very
to
sexual.
yes, that's not to say that it's not explicit. Not
Yeah,
to say that you're seeing like, full genitals or anything, but it's, they're it's like soft core, of course. But it
but it
doesn't
has
feel
purpose.
like porn, right? Like some movies, it's the same with like gore. I think I feel the same way about the gore in David Lynch films where like, sometimes you're watching a movie like, for example, Terrifier. It's just for the gore porn, right?
Hmm.
But with like Lynch or something, when you see any gore in his movies, it does not have the same kind of feeling to it at all.
Yeah,
Like it's not crass or um
without merit.
yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, but definitely really sexy scenes, and love that we get this lesbian couple. They're very problematic. They're bad for each other,
Yeah,
and it's a huge tragedy.
yeah.
But I love it. I think this is like just yeah, I mean, it's Mulholland Drive. It's amazing.
Very
So
intense suicide scene.
very intense, yeah.
We get Billy Ray Cyrus in here,
Oh yeah.
which is
The
interesting to
pool
see.
boy.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
always the pool guy. It's always
Always
the pool
is.
guy in these
I
movies.
know.
In California, the wife's always fucking the pool guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what can be said about the movie? That's already been said about the movie. Yeah, one I enjoyed
Yeah.
uh, quite a bit, and I this is one you can sit down and come up with multiple interpretations of certain things.
Yeah. Yeah. Now at the end.
Unfortunately for me, the next one is not that same experience. I think you could come up with whatever interpretation you want. But man, Inland Empire, his last feature film that he made many years ago now, almost 20 years ago. I think it's a
Yeah.
19-year-old film. So it sucks that he didn't make a feature for almost 20 years of life in his end. But, he was done. He wanted to make shorts and work on other things and do weather reports and whatever he was off doing. Uh, Literally weather reports for those of
Yes,
you who think who I'm kidding.
amazing. I love the weather reports.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, Inland
Golden
Empire,
sunshine.
the go ahead, do your weather
No,
report.
no, no. It's just he always ends it with like there'll be blue skies all along the way, or golden sunshine and blue skies. So good.
What's the name of the movie in this? In
This
Inland
one is
Empire?
high in blue tomorrows, or high on
He
blue
should have started. He
tomorrows.
should have ended it
On
with
high.
"There's going to be blue tomorrows." Uh,
Yeah.
this is a return of Laura Dern
Yes.
coming back to him again. We get Justin Theroux once again.
Yeah.
This is like another. This feels kind of like a spiritual sequel, like sister sequel to Mulholland Drive, where you have the Hollywood actress,
Mm.
and it all falls apart because of a romance that she has with someone on set. So very, very similar to Mulholland Drive in that way. And it's also very interpretive and very odd. But this one, and admittedly, I mean, he even says in the trivia with him that this was kind of an experimental, cobbled together, loose idea of these scenes that he was filming. He called Laura Dern and was like, "Want to experiment?" And she was like, "Sure." And
Yeah, if David
they
Lynch
came,
calls you and is like, "Do you want to experiment?" You say
and
yes.
he would just kind of film random scenes and then figure out a way to piece them together, and he started to see a narrative, and it was supposed to be a TV show, and it ended up being this 3 hour long exercise in my fucking patience, personally. This one just didn't work like almost at all for me. Like there's pieces, like moments, little tiny things I could pull out of here that were cool or interesting. Like there's some sight gags with like haunting like horror imagery for like a second here or
Mm.
there. Of course, there's some boobs in here that are nice, stuff like that. But this one just it really, like, could I piece together stuff from this and come up with a through line that I feel confident in, ignoring some other pieces? Yes, I think I came up with one while we were watching it, and I think I'm pretty happy with that interpretation of what I had said, and we can talk about that for a minute. But I just don't care to with this one. The other ones I care to. The other ones I left them kind of being like, oh, I want to figure that out. With this one, I
Yeah.
just didn't have that feeling. This one just felt. This one actually kind of pissed me off a bit. I don't want to really honestly say it didn't, but it felt like a waste of my time. It felt like 3 hours. That was like, this does not need to be 3 hours. This feels like, this was something that you shot that you didn't really have a full idea on. And your audience is, I don't know. I know there's people we talk to. I said I have friends that are like, this is my favorite Lynch film, and this is the one where I'm like, Emperor's New Clothes on. I'm like, fuck you. Like, I'm not really saying fuck you, but I'm just like, come on. This one for me is a little too much. This
Yeah.
one is a little too experimental. This one I don't feel like has. I don't think it's thought out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that this is for me definitely his most convoluted film. Um I wasn't a big fan of this one either. I don't hate it or anything. I just think that it's very confusing and just,
Fucking hate how it's shot too.
knowing, yeah, I'm not a fan of digital. I like the, so like the shots themselves, like I like that stuff. That all
I
feels
don't.
like regular like Lynch kind of stuff to me.
It's
So I
all
don't have a
close
problem
ups.
with that. But I didn't like the digital look to it, to be frank. But yeah, I mean, as you had said, just knowing that this wasn't ever really planned to be a film, I think that that comes across pretty clearly. Uh, I like Laura Dern in this quite a bit. I think I mean, she's
Her face
obviously,
was us the whole time.
yeah, there we were joking because like most of the opening of the film she's like very confused and like that's kind of how you feel watching it. But definitely some very memorable sequences too. There's one that like she is running with this spotlight on her at night
Yeah.
and she's got this like grimace on her face and it freaks me out. There was this other scene with this little guy being like or something with his finger that scared me. And then at the end, there's a really scary shot after somebody literally gets shot of this blown up, like creepy face of hers, like imposed on theirs.
Yeah.
Scary. That was scary. That stuff was really scary. Um, but yeah, I have a much harder time. Like, I don't know. I know that you would kind of talk to me about like an interpretation of the film, but I definitely have a way harder time like interpreting this film because I think what you were saying, like, it makes sense and can definitely work, but it is, as I said, I think convoluted is a really good descriptor for this. So this is one that like I would be interested in watching somebody's like
Yeah.
researched analysis of
Sure.
just to see like if they have a better understanding of some things. But yeah, I like some of the scenes for sure. Like I just think as far as like a story goes, it's confusing, and I think that there was a, I don't know if it was on here.
It has like an
Oh,
hour and 16-minute long
so
sort of sequel
there's,
of deleted scenes.
yeah, which is crazy. Apparently Blue Velvet also has like 50 minutes
Hmm.
of deleted scenes.
Yeah.
But this
And so
one,
does Dune.
there's some like meta stuff going on here
Yeah.
as well that I liked. Our light went off
That's all
because
right.
we've been
We've been
talking
talking for
for
so
like two
long. This was
hours.
like, just go down to whichever. It doesn't
It's
matter.
just not
It's
working
it's
because of that.
because yeah,
Anyway,
we're done anyway.
we're pretty much done. But yeah, this is not my favorite. So I, yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't have much else to say because
I
we've
got
been
nothing
talking
else.
for a while on it. But
Yeah, well, David Lynch, rest in peace. We lost a legend, obviously.
we lost a real
Not someone
legend.
I'm in love with. I get it. Like I see him and I see the appeal and some of his films are super iconic and super cool and other things I'm not as huge on. But you can't deny the impact and the cultural significance and the legacy that the guy left. So it's always a shame. I mean, I don't like to see anyone die, especially people that aren't shitty and are providing such body of art to the world that has really resonated and stuck with so many people for so long. Like he's touched so many people he's never even met.
Yeah,
How many of us can say that?
yeah, yeah. Yeah. What was there was the Facebook post, I guess, that was like announcing his passing, and they were like, as he would have said, that he left a hole in the world, but he would always say, like, look at the donut, not the hole.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's tough.
This world is wild at heart.
And weird on top.
Yeah.
This whole world is wild at heart and weird on top. Yep. Ain't that the truth? Yeah. I can't say anything
I
more.
think we said it all. I
It's
mean, it's been like
he's
2 fucking hours.
wonderful. So thank you if you stuck through this with us.
Yeah.
Please do let us know what you think about these films, and yeah.
We probably could have done 45 minutes on each movie, but
easily.
this is the
Easily.
way to do it. And we didn't even get to talk about Twin Peaks.
No, we didn't talk about any Twin Peaks. We didn't talk about Fire Walk with Me.
That's your favorite
So-
like Lynch thing, period.
I mean, yeah, Twin Peaks is like just so much a part of me, I feel. But as far as like, there's so many movies of his too that I love as well. So, but yeah,
I watched Twin Peaks 1 and 2, season 1 and 2 with her and the movie, and then about half of The Return before I tapped out.
I'm gonna make him finish The Return.
I couldn't take
because
any more
I'm currently
of Dougie Jones and Mr. Jackpots. That shit was just so repetitive and never was going anywhere. And I was like, I can't fucking do this anymore. How many episodes can I have of this guy just walking around like he doesn't know who he is? And
you made it through Inland Empire, babe. You can make it through The Return.
Dude, The Return's 18 episodes, an hour a piece. That's 18 hours. This is all. The Inland Empire is only 3 hours. This is 18 hours.
He's already promised me.
I'll fucking finish
it.
For
fear of divorce.
I'll finish it, but I'm not rewatching it. I will go from there. I'll try to remember, but I don't know what there is to remember for me. It's like, I was super interested in the first episode with wasn't it Matthew Lillard, or who was it who was being interrogated?
He's not in the first episode, but he comes in early on.
That was the first episode. No, it was the first episode. It's like very and they like are accusing him of killing his wife or something. And
I've only seen The Return
with the glass
twice,
like
2.5 times.
Little
little
box, and there's like, they're waiting for something to come into it and all that stuff. I was super interested. I'm like, ooh, where's this going? And then we never fucking talk about it again.
I don't think he's in the very first episode. But anyway, I'm currently rewatching Twin Peaks right now. So thank you for sticking
when you get to there, when you get to where we watch,
I'll let you know.
Then I'll come in and watch it with you.
Yeah.
I like the first season of Twin Peaks, and then everything from there I wasn't like huge on. Maybe I should rewatch it. I don't know. We'll see. All right, guys. That's that. I gotta go. Bye.